Welcome to Learn English with Sara, and thank you for joining me today for another episode of Learning English Through Topics. In this lesson, I want to guide you through a subject that so many learners care about deeply: how to sound more natural, more confident, and more relaxed when speaking English. This isn't about perfect grammar or memorizing long, complicated words. It's about developing the rhythm, tone, and patterns that make real conversation flow smoothly. Today, I'll walk you through essential habits and simple techniques that help you sound more like a native speaker and less like you're reading from a textbook. So take a deep breath, get comfortable, and let's explore this together. One of the first things that helps you sound natural is something very small, but surprisingly powerful: using fillers. These are tiny sounds or short phrases we use when we think little bridges that connect our thoughts to our words. Instead of long, heavy silence, you might say, let me think, or, before continuing your answer. Native speakers do this constantly without noticing. It makes their speech sound relaxed and human. You don't want to use them too often, of course, but sprinkling them in naturally helps your speech flow smoothly. For example, if someone asks you what you did yesterday, you don't need to jump straight into a perfect answer. You can pause lightly and say, let me see. I went to the park. This small shift already makes your English feel more alive and spontaneous. Another habit that instantly makes you sound more natural is using contractions. In conversation, native speakers almost never say I am, do not, or it is. Instead, they shorten the words to I'm, don't, and it's. When you use the full forms all the time, your sentences sound stiff or overly formal, like something written in a textbook, rather than spoken in everyday life. When you say, I'm going to the store, instead of I am going to the store, your sentence suddenly feels lighter and more conversational. At first, contractions may feel unfamiliar, but the more you use them, the more natural they become. Try listening for them when you watch movies or shows. You'll hear them constantly. Something else that matters just as much is choosing simple, everyday words. Many learners think using complicated vocabulary makes them sound intelligent, but in everyday conversation, using simple language is actually more natural. Instead of saying, I departed from my residence, a native speaker would simply say, I left my house. Instead of I desire a beverage, they would say, I want a drink. And instead of I am fatigued, they would say, I'm tired. Using simple words doesn't make you sound less smart. It makes you sound clear, confident, and comfortable. Remember, communication is not about using the most difficult words. It's about connecting with people in a way that feels easy and natural. Another way to sound smooth and confident is to use response words, the tiny reactions that show you're listening actively. English conversations are full of these quick cues. Yeah, right. Oh, really? Wow, I see, that makes sense. Without these small signals, a conversation can feel cold or disconnected, even if you understand everything. Imagine someone tells you they hiked in the mountains for 5 hours. If you simply stare or say nothing, the moment feels awkward. But if you respond with, wow, really, or I bet that was tiring, the conversation becomes warm and inviting. These response words work like the glue that holds a conversation together. A related tip is using natural and common phrases that native speakers say all the time. Expressions like no way, kind of, I guess, for sure, or by the way appear constantly in casual English. Learning these phrases helps you sound more fluent because they reflect real, everyday speech patterns. If someone asks whether you're going to a party, saying for sure sounds relaxed and confident. If you want to add extra information, saying by the way feels more natural than suddenly changing the topic without warning. These are the phrases that give English its everyday rhythm, and the more you use them, the more natural your speech becomes. Another essential part of sounding natural is intonation, the music of your voice. English is not spoken with a flat tone. Instead, your voice rises and falls to show meaning and emotion. If you speak with no change in tone, even good sentences sound robotic. But if your voice flows up and down naturally, your speech immediately becomes more dynamic and engaging. For example, in yes-no questions, the pitch usually rises at the end, while in questions beginning with who, what, where, when, or why, it typically falls. You don't need to memorize rules to master intonation. The best way to learn is simply to listen to native speakers and imitate their rhythm, almost like learning the melody of a song. Conversation also becomes easier when you know how to keep it going. Many learners can answer questions, but struggle to continue naturally. The secret is adding details and asking questions back. If someone asks what you did last weekend, instead of saying, I went to the beach, and stopping there, you might add a few details and ask them about their weekend too. This creates a smooth back and forth flow, like a friendly game of tennis. At the same time, don't be afraid of pauses. Native speakers pause naturally to think, breathe, or choose the right words. A moment of silence doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. In fact, pauses make your speech feel calmer and more thoughtful. Idioms and slang also add color to your English, but they should be used gently. Sprinkling one or two idioms into a conversation can make your speech sound lively and authentic. For instance, saying something is a piece of cake means it is easy, or saying hang in there encourages someone not to give up. If someone is about to give a presentation, you might tell them to break a leg as a friendly way of wishing them good luck. And when it rains heavily, you might hear someone say it's raining cats and dogs. These expressions aren't meant to be taken literally. Rather, they bring life and personality into your language. But remember, using too many idioms at once can sound unnatural. So use them like small spices that enhance, not overwhelm what you say. Another important lesson for sounding natural is accepting that mistakes happen. Fear of making mistakes prevents many learners from speaking confidently. But even native speakers make mistakes. They forget words, they repeat themselves, and they correct their own sentences. What matters is the message, not perfect grammar. If you make a mistake, you can simply say something like, sorry, and correct yourself. Most of the time, the listener already understands your meaning. The goal of real communication is clarity and connection, not flawless performance. When you allow yourself to speak freely without fear, your English becomes more natural and spontaneous. Nonverbal communication plays a huge role as well. Tone, facial expressions, and body language all help your English sound more natural. A warm smile, a slight nod, or a small hand gesture can make your conversation feel friendly and engaging. If your voice is flat and your face expressionless, even correct English can feel distant or dull. But when your face and voice match your feelings, surprise, happiness, curiosity, your communication becomes full and genuine. Simple habits like making eye contact or relaxing your shoulders make you appear confident even if you still feel unsure inside. To grow even faster, listening and speaking every day are essential. Listening helps you absorb the rhythm, phrasing, and tone of natural English. Watch videos, listen to podcasts, or pay attention to conversations in movies. Don't just focus on the meaning of the words. Notice how people speak when their voices rise and fall, when they use fillers or contractions, and how they react to each other. Listening trains your ear to recognize natural patterns, and speaking helps your mouth and brain work together to produce them. Practicing out loud is powerful even if you're practicing alone. You can read aloud, talk to yourself about your day, describe what you're doing, or repeat lines you hear in videos. The more you use English out loud, the more comfortable and confident you become. And if you have the chance, joining a conversation group or finding a language partner can help you practice with real people and real conversations. These experiences help you face the natural unpredictability of conversation, pauses, interruptions, unexpected questions, and they help you develop confidence with each interaction. Recording your voice is another surprisingly effective tool. When you listen back, you'll hear details you didn't notice before. Maybe you spoke too quickly, maybe your intonation was too flat, or maybe you forgot to use contractions. This awareness makes your practice smarter and more focused. Each time you record yourself and adjust something, you step closer to sounding natural and confident. Through all these techniques, one of the most important reminders is to be patient. Learning to sound natural doesn't happen in one day or even 1 month. It's a gradual process built on repetition, awareness, and courage. Celebrate your small improvements. Each conversation, each new phrase, each brave moment of speaking English is a victory. Comparing yourself to others will only slow you down. Your English journey is unique, and every step counts. Finally, it's helpful to look at all these elements together: fillers that make your speech flow, contractions that create a natural rhythm, simple words that communicate clearly, response words that show engagement, phrases and idioms that express emotion and personality, intonation that brings your sentences to life, and confidence that grows through daily practice. When these elements combine, your English becomes more than vocabulary and grammar. It becomes a living, expressive way of connecting with others. As you continue learning, remember that natural English comes from being relaxed, open, and engaged, not from being perfect. Every time you practice, you build the confidence that allows your English to shine. The more you speak, the more you sound like yourself, just speaking in another language. As you practice these techniques, try to imagine yourself in real, everyday situations, because sounding natural in English is not about memorizing rules. It's about responding the way people do in genuine conversation. Think about meeting a new coworker, chatting with a friend, or ordering coffee at a cafe. In those moments, people don't speak with perfectly structured sentences or formal vocabulary. Instead, they speak with warmth, rhythm, small imperfections, and little phrases that help the conversation breathe. When you start to imitate these natural patterns, your English becomes less like something rehearsed and more like something lived. Remember that the heart of natural English lies in connection. When you speak with someone, you aren't simply transmitting information, you're building a relationship, even if it's just for a few minutes. That's why things like tone, intonation, and reaction phrases matter so much. They show that you're not just understanding words, but also participating emotionally in the exchange. If someone shares good news and you respond with, "Oh, that's great," your tone carries as much meaning as your words. If they describe something difficult and you say, "Wow, that must have been tough," your empathy becomes part of the communication. When you focus on these small human moments, your English becomes warmer, more expressive, and more authentic. Another helpful idea is learning to trust yourself when speaking. When you hesitate too much or overthink each sentence, your speech loses its natural flow. But when you allow yourself to speak freely, even if you make occasional mistakes, you sound more confident and relaxed. confidence doesn't come from perfect grammar. It comes from practice, patience, and giving yourself permission to try again. Every time you initiate a conversation, answer a question, or tell a story in English, you're training your mind to think more naturally in the language. With each attempt, your speaking becomes smoother, your rhythm improves, and your voice becomes stronger. If you want to take another step towards sounding natural, try practicing shadowing, listening to native speakers, and speaking along with them in real time. This technique helps you match their speed, intonation, and rhythm. You can shadow podcast hosts, YouTube creators, actors in movies, or even English teachers in videos. Don't worry if you can't catch every word. The goal is to absorb the flow, the melody, and the natural pacing of the language. Over time, this practice shapes your own speaking patterns so that English begins to feel less foreign in your mouth. Another key skill is learning to extend conversations. Many learners answer questions briefly and then stop, which makes the exchange feel short or unfinished. But by adding 1 or 2 sentences, you give the other person something to connect with. If someone asks how your day was, instead of saying it was fine, you might say it was fine. I spent the morning finishing a project, and I'm looking forward to relaxing later. These extra details add depth and make the conversation feel more real. And when you ask a follow-up question afterward, you show interest and keep the flow going. Small changes like these can transform even simple conversations into confident, natural interactions. Throughout your learning journey, always remember that English is not only about understanding grammar or vocabulary, it's about expressing who you are. Your personality, your emotions, your perspectives, they all matter. When you allow those things to come through in your English, your speech becomes memorable and meaningful. You don't need to sound exactly like a native speaker. You just need to sound like yourself, speaking English comfortably and confidently. With time, you'll notice something remarkable. You won't be translating in your head anymore. You won't be worrying about each individual word. Instead, you'll be speaking with ease, letting the language flow through you naturally. And that feeling of being understood effortlessly, of connecting with people in another language, is one of the most rewarding moments in any learner's journey. As we reach the end of this topic, I want to leave you with a simple reflection. Learning to sound natural is not about perfection. It's about connection. It's about courage. And most of all, it's about patience. Every filler word you use, every contraction you practice, every conversation you attempt is a step forward. Even small progress is still progress. When you speak with confidence and authenticity, your English carries your personality, your stories, and your unique voice. And that is what truly makes communication beautiful. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today on Learn English with Sara. If you found this lesson helpful, please remember to like this video, share it with other learners, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which part of speaking naturally is hardest for you. Your participation helps this community grow, and I'm always excited to hear your experiences and support your progress.